Welcome to One Word Stories. My name is Joanna Zell, and I'm really happy to welcome a very special, inspirational guest of mine, Sakshi Bansal. Sakshi currently works for the Sustainable Development Agency, Aurward, and she is based in the UK, in London. Nevertheless, she comes originally from India. And over there, she founded a very powerful volunteer project. And this project, actually, when she started to talk about it, when we met in the Alps, in the south of Tirol, in Italy, made me very curious how she actually sees this voluntary commitment, because imagine it was also rewarded with the Princess Diana reward this year. So congratulations, Sakshi. And it led her also to talk and think and spread the idea of the kindness leadership. A very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna.
So, Sakshi, what is this organization about, the organization you founded in India? And what have you learned actually from this experience regarding, this huge narrative about voluntary work?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. You're right. When we met in Italy, there was an instant connection, and we spoke a lot over the 3 days. So it's a pleasure to speak to you again and also talk about LEAP, which is a volunteer project. So I started the project at the age of 17 in Delhi, in India. It's called Project Leap. And at that time, I was volunteering with different organizations, Rotary Foundation and other organizations. We were planting trees, we were asking for blood donation, so getting more blood donations. We were working towards breast cancer awareness, different agendas. And so I was in a group of thousands of volunteers like myself who were very young. So we had the best intentions at our heart, but I have to say we didn't always know what we were doing. We would go out there in the field, we would try to help people, and sometimes things wouldn't go as planned, or sometimes we did more bad things for the community than good in terms of our body language, or what ideas we shared, or how we spoke to people, things like that. So I observed these things and I realized, no, we need to think about how we work as a group who's trying to save the community, the planet, or help or support them. How do we actually do this? There's so many resources and skills available for employees in organizations and corporates, but not for us as volunteers. Especially in India, where the social service organization is very disorganized. People come as they come and they do as they do. There is no governing body for that type of work. So I started Project Leap with the idea that we would train our volunteers, we would arm them with the right skills, the right mindset. We would take care of the volunteers, make sure that they are motivated to volunteer, they stay with the community constantly and consistently. And they're able to talk about themselves, be proud of being a volunteer, talk about their impact and what they have done for the community, because that is important for their own growth. So that was the idea of Project Leap. And the idea, it was started on 1st of June in all those years ago. And we have established ourselves around the world, although it started in India. And it has done different things. We started with this equal education piece, where the 300 volunteers I had in Delhi were going out consistently teaching underprivileged families all over Delhi, to now where I train on skills, and I provide these skill-based trainings to volunteer groups around the world. And of course, I've learned so much over the years. The first thing I learned was leadership is not knowing what to do.
Mhm.
or knowing what needs to be done. As a 17-year-old, my idea of leadership in a democratic country was telling people what to do and they follow you. Very quickly, within 2 months, I realized that's not the leadership that people will follow or be inspired by. So it was more about listening what people really want and creating a simple message for people so that they can understand it and follow it and think about it. Um, so, my experiments with leadership, as you may call it, were my biggest learnings. The second thing I learned is you don't really need a lot to get started to help, but you can ask for help. That is still a work in progress for me, asking for help. I still try to do things on my own. Um,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that I need an army to make a change in the world, but it means that if I want one, I can have one.
Mhm.
And I think that's important, especially when you are trying to juggle 20 things in your life. And the third, and I think the most important thing I learned was the ability to say yes and figure it out later.
Yeah.
Uh, Leap allowed me to put myself in positions where I didn't really know what I was saying yes to 100%, but I said yes anyway because who else would? And then eventually figured it out. I was able to do that because I had my own self to be accountable for, and I had my risk-taking attitude. I understand not everybody can do it, but more or less, I think keeping that naivety alive in yourself, keeping that risk-taking appetite alive in yourself is so important.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And when I listen to you, of course, you trigger my curiosity. What was such a moment when you really took the risk and when you face a challenge and somehow you have managed to overcome it?
Um, so when I've taken a risk and overcame it, I think starting Leap was a risk.
Mhm.
I was 17, just starting my first formal education degree in a university in Delhi. And as a young person, people look at you as somebody who has a lot of ideas, but probably not an understanding of business or
Mm.
not an understanding of what it takes. They are right, we don't, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't go for it. Um, so I went around my university in the most scorching heat months of Delhi in the months of June and July. And I spoke to every person I could find. I would collect people, gather them. I would ask them to meet me in the park at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. And then I would just stand up on a pavement and sort of share my vision and my idea. And within 2 months, we had 300 people who had joined. And so it just showed that people were waiting for it.
Mm.
And it seemed so obvious for me, this thing about training the volunteers first and then them doing a good job. It seemed so obvious, but nobody really did it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that was a risk at that time to sort of also say, do I focus on this? Should I focus on my education? Is this a path that will get me anywhere? To be very honest, I don't think those questions even came in my mind.
Mm.
It was all about, I had this idea, let's get it done.
Yeah.
I never really weighed the risk options. That has changed. Now I
Yeah.
weigh risk a lot more, as you get older.
Mm.
The second risk is I also had a startup when I was 17, and it was an artificial intelligence for the hospitality sector. Now, I had no idea what artificial intelligence is. I was not an engineer, and I was 17, young entrepreneur in India. At that time, startups were not a thing. Very few people were doing it. Even fewer were successful, and women in startups was unheard of. Um, so that was an interesting time to sort of say yes and working with engineers. And I doubted myself a lot, of course.
Mhm.
Um, we all doubt ourselves, especially when we work with people who don't have the same education and skills like us. But I kept saying yes again and again, and we ended up selling the startup for a good amount of money. And for the 2 years we ran it, it was very successful in India.
Wow, one more success story. So Sakshi, as I listen to you, you are a born leader and you bring these qualities to the table where people are simply, learning hardcore from the experience and also from the manuals. What is so special about the kindness leadership, the
Hmm.
term you are sharing with everybody around?
Mm. It's a very interesting story, that one, After I started Project Leap, the next year I was nominated for this award, for the UNESCO Kindness Leader Award. And I didn't know about it. I didn't know I was nominated. So I get a phone call from UNESCO MGEIP office in Delhi in August in 2018. And they tell me I've won the award and I'm the world's first UNESCO kindness leader. I was quite young at that time. So
Very young.
yeah. so, so getting a title like that, you know, it I don't think I understood the gravity of it at that time. It was a really good experience. It was great for Project Leap. We got a lot of exposure. We had a documentary made on us.
Mhm.
Um, it was shown in the New York General Assembly at the UN in that year. We had reporters come and talk to us. I was gifted a phone. Um, so it was a really cool experience for a teenager. But the gravity of the word kindness, it was the first time I got stuck with it. And then over the years, with the course of the world, with the pandemic and with the Great Resignation and wars and political changes, the word kindness became more and more popular in organizations, with words like authenticity and vulnerability and empathy also coming in. So more and more people started looking at me and saying, "You tell us about kindness." And
Mhm.
suddenly I was like, "Oh, I need to tell you about kindness." And that's when I started researching about kindness and what it really means, and not just what it means as a general word in general life, but what it means for organizations you know and I've realized over the years that kindness generally in our usual day-to-day life, in our personal relationships, is slightly different from the kindness we expect or show at work. There are some elements of kindness that differ there. you know the way it sort of comes up, the actions you take for kindness, the things you hear when you say, "Ah, that's kindness," that's different for normal life and at work. And the other thing is the burden of kindness is much weightier at work. You feel the burden of being associated with a word like kindness at work, because you don't want people to expect that you will be kind 24/7. It's not possible.
Mm.
And so once you associate yourself as a kind organization, what if you have to fire people?
Yeah.
What if you don't do well? What if you
Mm.
have to make difficult decisions? What if you maximize profits? Will you be seen as fake? Will
Mm.
that be a detriment? So people really think before they associate themselves with these kind of words, same with leaders. Um, so there's a real burden about kindness. And a lot of the work that I've done in the past few years is about demystifying this word of kindness. Does it mean a certain thing? What is the burden around it? What is the expectation of people who say they are kind? Do they need to be kind 24/7?
Mm.
um is kindness a trait? Is it a choice? Things like that. So I think this is the message that I'm trying to get out, and I think I do believe kindness is a choice, and the idea is we make more kinder choices every day, and this helps people with their own journey into kindness, and their own burdens of kindness as well.
Mm. Yeah. When I listen to you, I'm just asking myself, where do you take all the power from? Because, first of all, as a woman, second of all, as a very, very young person, and as you can imagine, and you are aware of it, there are so many stereotypes regarding the Gen Z. And you are kind of, walking through the world and saying, hey, look at this possibility to act. Where do you take the power from? How do you also relate to the issue of kindness leadership, especially with these two dimensions, gender and age?
That's a very, very interesting question, Joanne. I don't think somebody has asked me that in a long time, but it is true. I've had my own struggles with the gender part, in the sense that with the startup, I was the only female in the startup, and I had to deal with a lot of ego and ideas of what women can and cannot do. Even today, there are instances where the ugly idea of limitations of gender, rears its head, and you realize it. I think every person goes through this journey where they start noticing when things are skewed in a different way because of gender. It becomes more apparent, and then you go through this journey of how do I deal with it. So I'm in that journey of dealing with it, where I let my work define me, or my ideas define me. And sometimes I do have to do 10 times the work than the other gender, just because I want to prove myself. Um, and I think kindness at that time is more inward facing. It's
Mm.
the idea that it's okay, and I understand, and I need to take time. The age, I've also had my struggles with it. The amount of times I have to wear my hair up and wear a red lipstick, just so I don't come across as young as I am. People, people's reaction
Mm.
to what you say changes. They like what I say, but as soon as they find out I'm 25 or 24, they suddenly everything I said just goes out of the window. But you don't know what you're talking about. But I knew what I was talking about 5 minutes ago when you didn't know my age.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've had my own struggles with it. I've had my own missed opportunities because of age. And I think at that time, kindness is more outward looking. I look at other people, and I try to understand their experiences of people of my age, or people of a different age. You know, my mother's experience of a 24-year-old when she was 30 years was quite different than my
Mm.
experience of 24 years old, because our generation just grew up with a different kind of anxiety. We had an impeding climate crisis. We have been through a lot of ups and downs. We grew up with technology as our native land. um, we grew up with the burdens of different generations as well, as does each generation in their own right. So I think it has changed. It is changing. People now look at your ideas and welcome you, and there are organizations and groups of people who don't look at you from your age perspective. So I think I take an outward approach to kindness when it comes to age, to really say what are their experiences of people with my age.
Mm.
What are their experiences with their own children or nieces and nephews, because that will largely impact what their experience is with me and what I'm saying. To be very honest, in both cases, the idea was historically to hide the age and the gender, uh,
Mm.
and to hide behind your work. Now the idea is to use it to your advantage.
Mm-hmm.
To be very honest, people spill secrets to young people more likely than they spill it to their peers. Um,
Mm.
People tell you and give you advice that they probably will charge you a lot of money for. Uh,
Mm.
and people also understand that you are the future. And so if you're saying something now, it is likely that that is going to be the challenge in 2 or 3 years time. So I think it's changing. I think it's about now using these things to our advantage.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I love it. I love also to know this re-narrating, that you see this change and you also see how you can profit from these assets, how you
Yeah.
can make them really huge values. Because what is very, very common narrative about the Gen Z actually is obviously, yes, this huge impact of the transformation at different levels in the 21st century, the climate change you have emphasized, but also this issue that you are digital natives. So also being bombarded by information all the time, being aware that it's so hard to really select something very meaningful and also meaning making. And additionally, what I hear from my students very often is the issue with fears, that the level of anxiety is very high, and additionally comparing all the time, this constant comparison with the peers. So this is also something that can block people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are the positive traits of the Gen Z?
Wow. I think as a generation, I think it's hard to speak for an entire generation of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And it
I'm in
also
no,
varies. Uh-huh.
yeah, and I think I'm in no way, shape, or form a representative of a Gen Z. Um, but from what I see, and hear and listen and read, is they bring their own set of challenges, like you explained, but they also bring their own set of values, the no bullshit taking attitude, the this is what the problem is and this is how you get to it, this simplification of message that they have. um, I really like that. I like how they are able to simplify, uh, and the ability to deduct from a larger issue what is the issue that they care about and then focus on that. So I really like that, and I think what we have seen so far is their ability to say, I have faced personally the issue of mental health, for example, or bullying, or skin color stereotypes, and then the ability to go and change that one single thing, but they will change it or they will do something
Mm.
about it. And I
Mm.
really like that. um the sort of that power of saying, this is what I personally care about, and this is my contribution to the planet.
Mm.
I like that.
Exactly. And thank you for sharing, because this is also something what I imagine that was also very helpful when you were searching for the volunteers for your organization, that so many people really needed just the invitation to join and to be proactive. And I was really mesmerized when I listened to your idea of empowering volunteers. Because in many organizations, sometimes people feel a little bit of, oh, I'm doing so much in my free time and I contribute so much, and do I really feel appreciated? Do I really feel empowered? Yeah, so all these issues, all these questions. And when I listened to you, I was really happy to hear it from your mouth. But also when I reflected on my experience with such organizations where I volunteered, I was really grateful that actually this is what happened in my case, that I never ever had this issue, oh, do I really invest time in something that is meaningful? It was
Yeah,
always 100% clear.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it is so good to hear that's the experience you have had, because I think we need more of that. This ability for people to connect with different people, and to put ideas out there without necessarily weighing the risks too much, or waiting for the perfect moment, or waiting for the analysis to come through. Um, I think there is this certain idea of being evidence-based, absolutely, doing the right thing, getting the right skills and training. But at certain point, you say, I need to start, I need to put this into action. And at that point, volunteers can be of great help. And I simply ask the volunteers what they want to do in life. Tell me where you want to get to. And I wasn't expecting to hear we want to do Project Leave our whole life. That's not possible.
Mm.
But what do you want to do? And let us help create a space in Project Leap where you can experience that, explore that, try it out safely,
Mhm.
learn safely, or use this as a stepping stone. As long as you create organizations that are stepping stone for people, they'll always be empowered.
Yeah.
to do the next, to do more, to engage more. But I don't think anybody asks in organizations, what is it that you
Mm,
really want? We talk about bringing your full self to work. We talk about the
yeah.
goals and the culture fit with the employee and the organization. But really, what is it that you want? And
Mm.
and I will be shocked if an employee says, I want to work for you for 10 years, where you pay me average salary, you make me do the same job, and you add to my burdens. That's just very unlikely.
Just actually, when we met in the Alps, you were talking about this issue with gender. You were also a little bit talking about this issue with the age. So also, the challenges to really come across as a young professional. And this is also something that guides me personally to the question, what is the word that actually supported you in times of uncertainty and really turbulent times? And what is the story behind?
Hmm. My one word has to be fearless.
Hmm.
It's a funny word because it's something that has been given to me time and time again from people who know me or from strangers as well. But I remember when I was quite young again, so with the charity and everything, the thing that kept me going was traveling.
Mm-hmm.
I have been traveling alone since I can remember, to different parts of India back then and now all over the world, you know. In India, I had a bike, a motorbike. I would go across the whole country. I met strangers. I slept in tea stalls, in trucks, in tents. I slept in monasteries. I met random people. I built houses. Um, I met people from around the world. You know, we cut trees together. We planted trees together. I've had all kinds of experiences. You know, um, and every month I traveled. I did 39 trips in India when I
Mm-hmm.
was in a span of 2 years. Um, every trip I took, I had this ability to talk to strangers, to ask for their story, to listen, sometimes to even share mine. Um, and I was doing it in a time when solo traveling as a female was not a thing. It
Yeah.
wasn't considered safe. People weren't doing it at all, traveling alone, let alone a female traveling alone across the countries. And most people who knew that I'm on these adventures would warn me and say, "Why? You know, go with us or go with your friends, or we'll take you, or are you safe?" There was an element of risk taking there for sure, with safety and with health and whatnot. But the idea was also to be fearless and to believe that human beings are good in general. Um, I've had my share of bad and good experiences on these travels and trips, but most importantly, I've had more good experiences than bad, and I've had rewards. I've received rewards for these fearless experiences. You know, in terms of friends all over the world, in terms of perspective from all over the world, in terms of coming back every time and realizing how small everyday problems are, how much there is to learn from nature, and that people are simple. You know, the issues, the
Mm-hmm.
struggles we have, we share from people around the world, and that's the simple thing that connects everybody. Um, I think I have got this fearlessness from my father, who also, as you know, went to Japan when he was 18 years old, ran away from his home in Rajasthan in India, and ran all the way to Japan, and didn't come back for a very long time. So I think I get the fearlessness from there, and I've continued it ever since. You know, every month I travel, even when I moved to the UK, and it's so important. Um,
Mm-hmm. It also resonates with me a lot because you say that your father, left India and started to search for good luck in Japan. Nevertheless, at one point he returned to India, got married. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking here. So, what did actually make him return? What is the story behind?
Oh, that's such a story. That's such a story close to my heart. You know, my father was from this place in Rajasthan called Mount Abu. It's a very small mountainous region in a desert, and we lived 2 hours on the top of the mountain at the ancestral property. So it took you 2.5 hours to come down from the mountain to the nearest big city where you had telephones and phone calls. And my father ran away in 1969. This is before WhatsApp and video
Yeah,
calls.
yeah, sure.
And so when he ran away and my grandmother found out through some of our cousins who had found where he was, she used to come down from the mountain every once in a year and call him from a local phone booth. And that call was very expensive. She had to dial my cousin in the US, and he would connect her to my father in Japan. And by then, it was already very, very expensive. So they would only speak for a few seconds or minutes. So every year she did this exercise until one of those years, she came down, she picked up the receiver, and she says only one word to my father in Hindi, and she says "Aja," and it meant come back in English. And she kept the receiver and she went back. And, so she waited the whole year to think about what she wants to say, but she only came up with that word. And my father came back within the next month, had a flight, left everything, and he came back. So I always think about how strong their bond must have been, or the way she said it, or the fact that she only said one thing, that
Mm.
he came back after all those years. And of course, my grandma, being my grandma, she didn't call him because of an emergency. She called him back because she wanted him to get married. According to Indian standards, he was already too old, and the clock was ticking. So she got him married, and my mom and dad had me. So yeah, I am the product of that one word. Absolutely.
I love it. I love this story. It's beautiful. And I guess this is also part of your attitude, your fearless nature, that you have partly inherited it from a very, very strong man.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely have. Mm.
So, Sakshi, I wish you all the best for all your projects, for all your things to come. It doesn't really matter whether voluntary work or your professional paid work. And of course, yes, all the best for the personal life so that you also can blossom in all the areas. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much, dear Joanna. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.